Hi guys, welcome to the Peppermint Apes Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the best musical equipment to use.
The way you move on me, it's not how you play the game, but even so, this needs starting because
Okay, guys, how we doing?
Always better, mate, when I'm talking to you.
Obviously.
All good.
Yeah, all alive and well.
That's good to hear. So, all back to work now, aren't we? Well, you guys are, I'm not.
Hey, how long is it till you go back, Chris?
Well, I've got a new job, so 3rd of August I go back, so...
Nice. Congrats.
Top stuff.
You looking forward to it? You looking forward to getting out of the house?
Oh, mate, I can't wait. I mean, it was great at first, but I'm literally going insane. Like, I just stare at walls now.
Isn't that what you said as well, Ryan? Like, you can only watch so much Netflix, and then you're like, right, I'm bored.
Yeah, exactly, mate. After a while, you just lose yourself. You know, you start thinking, I'm gonna learn knitting. No, not really. It wasn't quite that bad. But you know, but no, it's been good though as well, hasn't it? Because we've been able to work on projects and record stuff, do this podcast, and we've been very productive. But I think over the last sort of 6 weeks or so, the Apes, we've been a little bit quiet online, haven't we? Just because we've all been adapting to. I mean, I've gone back to work. Sam, you've gone back to work. Lou, you've always been working, but you know, we've just been adjusting, haven't we? So you know, we do plan to keep the momentum going and be as busy as we can. But yeah, it's just tweaking at the moment. It's a transitional period for the Apes, I'd say.
Yeah. Anyway, so musical equipment. So I think what we want to sort of discuss, guys, in this episode is just like the evolution of being a musician. So I mean, when you start out, I mean, you sort of had sort of the bottom end gear like Stags or Yamaha Pacificas or something like that, and then even some Squire stuff and that, and then sort of how you know what we use now compared to what we used to use, and how we get the best out of what we have now. I mean, because before we even started recording this podcast, we were discussing about how we don't have the best equipment, but we still get a lot out of it, don't we? So, or what we've got, and it works for us. So yeah, it's just to have that sort of discussion of the evolution from a beginner musician and the equipment that you use then and the equipment that we use now, and why it's important to have good gear. So, Ryan, how about we start with you? And what sort of musical instruments did you start out with?
I started out with a triangle. No, I'm joking. Basically,
Real bottom end.
Yeah. Well, just before the Apes and before my first sort of band, I used to have a Squire. What was it? I had a Squire Strat basically, and a little 10-watt amp that you just plug in. That was kind of like the practice standard, and I think that's for everybody. You have something nice and cheap, just so while you're learning your instrument. But I think where the bands were concerned, when I started off in bass in Covalent and Split Decision just before the Peppermint Apes, I was always quite fortunate because my dad was always in bands. He was in T-Rex and country bands over the years. He had his own studio, so I would sometimes borrow his equipment. So there was basses I would be playing, and he would, because he understood music, he understood the importance of good gear. When we started to take the band seriously, he pushed me to get good equipment. He helped me. He loaned me some money to buy a Marshall bass amp, and I paid him back. And that was the first thing. And then eventually, when I did play guitar in the Apes, I bought an orange cab, combi amp. So I was quite fortunate in the sense where I had the backing of my dad, which not everyone has. But I did obviously pay me way, and he understood the importance of it. Don't just have a cheap amp. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're starting out, I can only use what you've got. I get that, but if you're taking it seriously, it's also visually as well. You want to have something that sounds good but looks good. So apart from having those little practice amps, like I say, the Squire guitars and stuff like that, I was quite lucky to sort of work with Ibanez basses and straight away work with a Fender Telecaster, which I actually got for my birthday. So yeah, lucky that I had a dad that was a musician. But I'd imagine for you guys, it probably was a little bit different.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah. I mean, what about you, Sam?
Yeah, when I started out, well, my stepdad plays guitar, and he's got a Yamaha Pacifica, which I used to play on, and he's got a Yamaha acoustic guitar, which also sounded pretty good. So I used to just play on that, and then I gradually started learning guitar a little bit, and so I was using that. But in terms of drums and stuff, I actually never had a drum kit for the first 2 years of me actually playing. I used to only play in drum lessons in school. It was only until my mum bought me an Ion, that's ION, very, very basic electric drum kit. It was 5 pads, and it was probably about 160 quid. I say it like it's cheap, but compared to equipment that's around now, that is relatively cheap for some kit. So I had that. That was an electric drum kit, and I used that for about 4 years, I think, before she managed to save up the money and buy me a Roland TD3, which was the standard then, that big standard for electric drum kits. And I've still got it to this day. Amazing kit. In terms of the acoustic side of it, I never got an acoustic kit until probably about a little while after I got the Roland. 'Cause what it is, I get bored of things really quickly. So my mum wanted to see if I stick the instrument out, because it's like when you're young, you jump from one thing to another. But because I stuck to drums, she thought, I've actually got something that I want to do. So the first drum kit she got me, acoustic one, was a Millennium drum kit from Thomann. It's like their own brand, and entry level kit, entry level cymbals. I gigged with it as well, and I managed to make it sound pretty good as well, tuning it, things like that, looking after it, changing all the skins. But that's basically where I started out. Very, very basic low end equipment, if you like. I say it like I'm being ungrateful, but that is what it is. It's low end if you compare it to some of the stuff that's out now.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. What about you, Lewis?
Not too similar from the rest of you guys, really. I started off with like a guitar and amp combo. We actually, I don't know if you guys remember, and obviously not everyone will know Basildon Town Centre, but when they used to have Index. Classic. And I got an Encore, was the brand, and of the amp as well, like a little 10-watt blaster amp,
Yeah.
And I got a starter kit kind of thing from there. I remember it had like a pick and a couple of picks, strap, strings, all the sort of like the basic things that you get.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've still got that to this day, actually.
Which the tuning fork as well with it.
Yeah. So I've still got the guitar, not the other stuff, unfortunately. I'm not sure where the other parts are, but so that was my first actual instrument, actual guitar. I think before that, the first guitar I owned was like a 3/4 size classical, like a nylon strung classical.
I remember that. I remember that one. Yeah, you used to do your lessons in school with it, didn't you?
Yeah. And so that was like my first actual guitar. And then obviously I learned to play riffs and things on that. And then I progressed to my first electric, which was one I mentioned. And then again, I think I had that played on that for about 2.5, 3 years. And then, because at that time we started getting into bands and things, then we wanted to rehearse with friends, and as it goes, you need a bit more power than your sort of 10-watt mega blaster. I always remember there was a jam night, and Sam will attest to this. I think Ryan might have done it before. I don't know if you did, Chris, in Stamford. But obviously for jam nights, you just turn up with your guitars, and they've got the equipment there, and they were fantastic because they were all like proper, like rock and rollers, so everything was a wall of Marshall stacks. So I remember standing in front. I mean, I'm not tall now, but you imagine then at like 13, and just standing in front of a wall of Marshalls and hitting an acorn. It's like bang, like hits you in the face.
Is this legendary wooden hut?
That's it. Yeah.
Great little venue that was.
Yeah. And so I never forget standing in front of a Marshall stack, just going whoosh, blew my mind. But yeah, from my Encore, I progressed to Epiphone. So I got an Epiphone SG. And then I ended up getting a Gibson SG. And then through the years around that point, then I just kept acquiring different guitars, really, like different standards. This is when eBay was really good for guitars. This is before they started cracking down on it. So me and my dad just kept getting these ridiculous deals for like next to nothing for what these guitars were. So we had, I had some Epiphone ES335s. I had a couple of different Fender Strats, American ones. I always remember I had one with Texas Specials in it, and they changed the pick guard, so it was all like RGB lit. So you had a switch. It was really cool. I had like Tokai and things like that, which was a really good Japanese brand. And then I say eventually I worked up to my favorite Gibson, and I eventually got a Les Paul as well. So yeah, just kind of, as you would expect, really sequential, going from the real beginner sort of combo packages that you get all the way up to the, the holy grails, the things that when you learn you aspire that you want. You see your heroes with a guitar and you think, you see yourself with it,
Yeah.
And so I finally got there after many years.
Nice one.
How about you then, Chris? What about you when you started out?
Basically, it's very similar to Lewis. When I was about sort of, I don't know, primary school, my parents got me like a little nylon and they wanted me to take guitar lessons. And what I remember, my parents really, really pushed it. And they were like, and the guitar teacher at my primary school was a Spanish guitar teacher. So, I mean, you can imagine trying to teach sort of an 8-year-old how to play Spanish guitar when he doesn't really want to be there. It didn't go down that well. And I remember, I think when I was about 9 years old, I just never played guitar again. And then I think one Christmas, because my mum and dad had always said to me, you have to start off on a nylon string guitar. And they didn't even call it that. You have to start off on an acoustic guitar and then to progress to an electric guitar. That's just how you do it. And I took that as gospel. And I mean, looking back on it now, I think they just didn't know what they were talking about, really.
So you told them on a podcast.
Yeah, there we go.
They're going to watch this podcast, aren't they?
So then it was one Christmas. I think when I was must have been about 11 or 12. They bought my sister a hamster and they bought me an electric guitar. And they were like massive Christmas presents. Were like the biggest Christmas presents we'd ever had. And I was like, I come downstairs and it was like this Stag, like Sunburst Stratocaster. And it was like the kit, like you said, Lewis, it had like the 10-watt amp, it had like a strap, it had the tuning forks, it had like the thinnest guitar pick known to mankind. It's basically a piece of balsa wood, It's just like you played anything too heavy, it definitely would have snapped. And I think my dad played guitar when he was young. So when I say he was young, like sort of teenagers stuff, and he could play like 2 riffs, and those 2 riffs were "Smoke on the Water" and "Summer Lovin' by Grease."
Stand back, boy. I'll show you how you play this one.
Yeah, and it was literally, it was like 1-note riffs. It was just like, this goes to the 5th and the 6th fret, and you just open the string. I remember doing it, and he could tune the guitar, and I played that. I mean, I had guitar lessons then, but again, when I was at senior school, the guitar teacher there was just like, let's play The Simpsons, let's play EastEnders, let's play, I don't know, like some weird, obscure country song that I'd never heard of. And it was just literally just like some open chords. And I just got so bored and fed up with it that I just put it down. And then there was a couple of guys in my class at form, and they got the same guitar as me. And they were like you said, Lewis, like jamming out, like jam nights and stuff. And we used to go after school and just sort of, fuck around in the music rooms and that. And it sort of inspired me. And then from that day on, my second guitar after the Stag, I mean, I played that thing to death, literally. There's nothing left of it now. It's just in bits. All the electrics has just gone. I think it's because it was so cheap as well. I think it just basically got sweaty and that was it. And then I got like a Tanglewood TSC, it was like a Les Paul copy after that. And then I got my first Epiphone SG. And then I was going down that road. And then I started to get into like the really like heavy metal guitars like the Ibanez and Jackson and stuff. And then I moved on to, I was going down like the Gibson Les Paul route, and then all of a sudden I just liked the Strat, and then so that score went full circle, went back to a Strat, but obviously it's like I got a Fender USA Strat and a Fender USA Telecaster now. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it now.
Yeah, nice one. I mean, we'll I know you're hosting this, Chris, but I just had a question. Like, we'll come back to what we're playing now, or what we were playing when we started in bands and stuff like that. But then I know that you, Chris, you use Fender, and Lewis, you use Gibson. I'll start with you, Lou. Why Gibson over anything else, really?
Yeah, I think you'll all probably agree, and especially for you, Sam, because you play a different instrument. But I imagine it's probably the same. Like, you have a drummer that you love, and you love the sound of their snare that they have, or the different cymbals. It's something you just get used to the sound of, the way that you like the look of. And all my main guitar heroes really played humbucker guitars, and they all pretty much had Les Paul. So Slash, Jimmy Page, they were my main sort of heroes, and they all, the image of Slash with the hair and the leather jeans and the, and just shredding, it just looked so cool, and the gold tops, and it just really resonated with me. I just loved the look of it. I loved the sound of it. I loved, and so I loved people like Hendrix as well, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And some single coil guys as well. And John Frusciante is one of my all-time favourite guitar players who plays these Strats. But there's something for me, whereas there's a certain, very specific type of crunch that I like. Is there like a main rhythm sound for my guitar, and the humbucker just does that for me. The type of sort of crunch and bite that I like. The humbucker guitar and the full body of a Les Paul, because obviously for anyone that doesn't know, they weigh a lot. I don't know, Chris, I don't know if you've played one, or they weigh an absolute ton. They're like a big solid chunk of mahogany, so that that's sort of, they are very different. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, break your neck and do your shoulders in. But yeah, for me, it was just an aesthetic thing, and it was just the sound of the music that I like to listen to. They all played those type of guitars, and it just summed it up.
Yeah, that's really good, mate. And then Chris, why Fender really over anything else?
It's a weird one, really, because all my guitar heroes don't play Strats, so I'm the same as Lewis. Literally, love Angus Young. I don't say all my guitar heroes. I mean, like Jimi Hendrix, for example. I love Hendrix, but then later on in his career, he was playing a Flying V with humbuckers. So,
yeah,
like, I just kind of. I used to really, really love like exactly the same what Lewis was talking about, like the fat bottom end of a humbucker guitar, and having more body definitely adds to the sustain and adds to the depth of the note. But hence sort of why I transitioned to Strats. I just really got into Nile Rodgers at one point. Like, I just loved listening to like everything that he'd done, and that funk sound. When you roll the tone off on a Strat and boost the volume a little bit, you just get no better sound. I mean, for me anyway. I mean, if you put it on, I think it's position, what's a 5-way select, so position 4 or position 2, where you got the two pickups resonating together, and you can get a real sort of funky, sort of percussive sound on a guitar. It was just great, and I love that. But then I still had that humbucker thing that I wanted, so that's why I bought this Strat I've got now. Has got a humbucker in it. So, it's still there, but I don't know, aesthetically, I just love the look of like a Telecaster or a Strat now. I still love Les Pauls, and I still want a Les Paul. I really want one. And regrettably, I used to have a 1956 Epiphone Les Paul, gold top. No, it's a copy, an Epiphone copy, so it's licensed by Gibson. But and it was a gold top, and it was modelled on the 1956 Les Paul, and it was amazing. It had P90s in it, everything. I honestly regret getting rid of it. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like, I don't play it much. I probably haven't played it in like 3 months or something. I thought, get rid of it. Don't need it. But if I could have that guitar back, I really would, a heartbeat. But I mean, for now, it's just Fender. I love it. I can't get enough Fender stuff.
Yeah, nice. Rye, just a quick throw over to you as well. Then, what's your preference? I actually don't know what guitar you. I know you play bass in this lineup, but previously you always played guitar. I actually don't know what guitars you play. I know you have got a Fender, but I don't know what else you actually played on. But what's your preference out of your guitars that you have?
Well, it's always been, fun enough, Fender as well. I've always loved the Telecaster. I have got a Music Man as well, but it's always been, I've got two main Telecasters that I've always sort of, used. I've got a Mexican Tele that I bought in America, and an American Telecaster that I got for my birthday years ago from my dad. And I've always, to this day, still use that as my main guitar. I'm not one of these people that wants to have loads and loads of guitars. I just like to get a good sound. And I think the reason why I like the Telecaster, I think for two reasons. One, growing up, I always loved Status Quo. I always loved Rick Parfitt, and he's probably, I do generally think he's one of the best rhythm guitarists of all time. Noel Rodgers is up there as well, of course, but very underrated musician. And the other sort of guitarist that I was a big fan of was Wilco Johnson. His rhythmic, and he never used to have a plectrum. He used to he had a very unique way of strumming.
He'd have bashed strings, didn't he?
Yeah. I think in the early Dr. Feelgood years, people used to say, "Oh, your scratch plate, has it got like red dots on it?" He said, "No, that was the blood."
Yeah.
So, that was my sort of influences, really. Obviously, I like all different kinds of guitarists. From a bass perspective, I've always loved the Fender, again, Precision, because I love that 70s sound. I do like the Ibanez. There's quite a few. I love status basses. I think that's something I'd like to get one day. That's got a really good tone. It's great for slap bass as well. But yeah, I think that you can't go wrong with a good Precision bass, really, because it's just great tones, really. And I think from the 70s, you had like Steve Curry from T-Rex. A lot of the, even Norman Rockwell used to use it as well. So I think, I think Fender wins for me.
And sorry, I want to throw that question over to Sam, because obviously we're all stringed instrument players. So as a drummer growing up, like what do you look for? When you're choosing your kit and things like that, because obviously there's a lot more components, I would assume, in terms of, sizes of your drums, the different skins you can have, the tunings of them, the brand, what were you looking for, and what sort of made you choose what you've gone for now?
Well, my sound's changed quite dramatically over the years. So when I first started, my biggest influence was Trey Cool. So I wanted that big rock drum sound, really. So, I changed all my skins to Evans. When I got my Millennium kit, it come with like Millennium skins, basic ones. So I went out and I bought some Evans Genera G2 skins and G1s for the bottoms. Got me Vic First sticks and stuff, and I went out and actually bought myself a Ludwig snare drum, because Trey Cool uses Ludwig, and that was the snare had a really nice pop to it as well, really nice big sound and a pop, and just big tom sounds. That's just what I wanted to have. And then as I went on, I started getting more into like Foo Fighters kind of sounds and stuff, like where he had again, Taylor Hawkins has also got them big drum sounds as well. So that's where I went out and bought a Gretsch Catalina rock kit, and that was a 26-inch kick drum. Now that's humongous. My kick drum at the moment is 22-inch. 26 is massive, and it was a massive boom. And the problem is I could never tune that kit because it was just so big and resonant. I just couldn't tune it properly. And then as time went on a bit more, I got into more funky kind of sounds. So when you listen like to the 1975 and when you listen to Low Atlantis and stuff, their kits aren't like rock kits. They've got a really tight snare sound and highly tuned toms and things like that. So and then same with Chad Smith. Although he's a rock drummer, his kit is very funk and jazz set up. So he's got them high-pitched toms and a big crack on the snare. So I've actually got a Chad Smith Pearl Signature Pro snare. And
nice.
It's got a lovely pop to it, and it's really, really nice. When it's tuned, I don't play as often anymore. But when I first got it, it was absolutely beautiful. So, yeah, I went for the big sound, but I go for the really tight kind of sound now where it's just, simplistic, if you like, rather than too many components involved. That's why I only play a 4-piece kit. I don't like 20-piece kits, 8, 10, 12-piece kits. 4 pieces, 3 cymbals at the max. I've just bought a new cymbal, so I've got 3 cymbals now. I've never been one to have 20 cymbals. Well, like Terry Bozzio, the Rev, rest in peace, Avenged Sevenfold's old drummer. They use like loads of cymbal, but then I suppose when they're playing that genre of music, they need as many components as they can. But for me, it's 4 pieces and 3 cymbals, 4 if we would include the hi-hats. So that's just what I go for now.
And just in terms of like how you say, I always remember when you had your toms flat.
Yeah, so that
is that like an aesthetic thing, or is that a tonal thing? Like, because I always remember you had. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah,
but that was when I was going for my pop punk stage. No, don't get me wrong. I just forget to set up like that, but I would still play like that now because Travis Barker, he, again, was one of my biggest influences, and I've still got his stick bag to this day that my sister got me for like my 16th birthday or something. And he used to have his toms flat, and his snare drum was basically in line, the same height. So that was mainly to help with his speed around the kit, so he didn't have to angle your wrists up to get the drum rolls around the kit. And I was able to build up such immense speed having it like that. And then when I stopped playing drums for a while, I kind of stopped setting up the kit like that. But I must go back to that way because I found that way really comfortable to play rather than having snare, tom at an angle, and then your floor tom. I just much rather having them flat. And that's just how I prefer to play. But yeah, thank you for remembering that. That reminds me.
Yeah.
I must start setting my kit like that again. But then I think when we're playing live and stuff, do venues think that they're getting a pop punk band? You know, just sound like a pop punk kit.
Yeah, I don't think they really pay much attention.
Yeah, that's the thing. Of course, they don't really care. It's just, I just think like if it's a wedding or something, then they see the kit sell. Look, if it was like, if say it was a drummer at a wedding or something, or a drummer was in the audience, they might think, oh, hang on, this is a Blink-182 tribute playing or something.
You imagine turning up with two bass drums.
Wedding.
Yeah, the drummer at the wrong gig. Yeah, that's the best video ever.
No, I suppose you could say it's all the small things, really, isn't it?
Chris, you crack on, mate.
Yeah, I would have, mate. Yeah.
Let's wrap this up.
That's kind of my equipment kind of background, if you like.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. What make is your kit now?
So my kit at the moment is a Yamaha Stage Custom, and I've had it since I was in college. I'm 28 now, and I've had it since I was 18. It was second hand from college. My dad bought it. 250 quid cost me. Brand new, had been about 800, 900 quid. I bought it from college, and I've had it ever since. And I've put all my skins on it and stuff. I just look after it, you know. If you look after your stuff, it lasts a long time. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to buy another kit. But that's while I had the Yamaha, I bought a Gretsch Catalina Rock.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And I was using the Gretsch, but it was just too big. It was just too big of a kit for me to use, and it was too resonant, like I said earlier. So I just like that tight sound.
I suppose that transitions nicely into what we're using in the band now and how we got to where we're at with the band, doesn't it, really? So, I mean, like, Sam, you're sort of the main one on the PA system and stuff in the band. So do you want to talk through what we use now?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're running a Behringer XAir 18, which, if people obviously don't know, is a digital mixer. Now, the difference between digital and analog is quite obvious. So the analog ones are where you have all your sliders on the front of it, you have all your knobs and buttons and stuff on it and stuff. And we have got one of them. I think Ryan's got my one at the moment. I've got a 16-channel one. It's 2-channel USB. Now, that's the problem with analog ones. Unless it's ultra high-end, like Alan Heath mixing desks, that will only ever do 2-channel, and we don't really want that because we want to be able to record our gigs. So the digital mixing desk, and it's a Behringer one, so it's not ultra high-end, but this is where things have just transitioned on in time. You don't need to spend the earth to get good kit, or the kit that you require to do the job. So our one's got 18 channels on it, and they're all individual. So I can bring them into my laptop, and we can do 18 channels of, you know, individual audio tracks. So we can fully mic up a kit, fully mic up the amps, and it's also got 6 monitor outs on it. So we can have 6 in-ear monitors or foldbacks on the stage. And because it's digital, we can have it all controlled from my laptop. There's no buttons or sliders on it. It's all done via iPad, or it's done via my laptop while on the stage. So luckily, Ryan's dad comes to our gigs. He has the iPad, and he's out in the audience doing all the levels and stuff. And the benefit of having this mixing desk as well is we can make what we call a silent stage. So we've got enough monitors. So an analog mixing desk, again, unless it's ultra high end, we only usually have about 2 or 3 foldbacks or aux returns on them. So whereas a digital one, we could have more return feeds on it. So each of us can get our own mixes in our ears. And because we can do it, we can all use in-ear monitors and therefore make the silent stage, therefore reducing the stage volume as well. So we haven't got to compensate for the wedges on the stage so we can hear them. So that's what's really, really good about this one. And that cost us about 360 quid, I think, £360. And it's not let us down at all, is it, lads? It's done brilliant. And we've recorded all our gigs on it, all multi-channel audio, and like Dakota as well, recorded it live, and it come out really good. And in terms of speakers, now speakers was the difficult one, I think, because there's many variations to speakers in terms of wattage and RMS and peak volume and things like that. I think we all took a little chance in finding out the information on it, but I just typed on the Google, you know, best PA speakers of 2020 or 2019, and the ones that were coming up were the Alto, what we got, T16, T18s. Yeah, and okay, the reviews were all saying, yeah, great for, you know, DJs, great for parties and things like that. But I was seeing a lot of reviews as well for bands saying the band aspect of it is brilliant. Like, we can get full range through it. They're loud, and they're 1,000 watt RMS, 2,000 watt peak. So that's phenomenal power you've got there. And I think we put it to Colin. Now, Ryan's dad is a veteran when it comes to the music scene, music and all that, because like your dad's done the live sound for the Apes for many, many years, hasn't he? And I think he was looking more down the route of like Mackie speakers and QTX, like the ultra high end ones on like not brand new because they're just too expensive, but even looking at used ones. But I think the four of us come to an agreement to say, look, let's just take our chances really and give these a try. And what do you guys think of the speakers? I'll start with like you, Chris, just a quick brief. I think you guys should have a quick opinion on the speakers. I mean, personally, I think we've done a great investment on using them.
Fantastic. It's the best PA system that I've played through in a band, really. Also, apart from when I played like big venues and stuff, when you've got like a whole separate sound engineering team and things like that. But for what we need and for the level we're at, I think it suits us down to a T, really. And out of the years that I've been in bands and things, having a decent live sound is it is so important. You can be the best musician in the world, but if you've got shit set up, you're going to sound rubbish. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. I've played in bands before where they've had not very high output passive speakers and I haven't used a very good amp to power those speakers from the mixing desk, and the sound quality has just been awful. I mean, especially as you're trying to play over a live, acoustic drum kit as well. So
I think what's good as well is, back in the day, you used to be able to get more powerful passive speakers because it was just a cab and you'd put your amp through, but then you got to worry about ohmage and wattage and things like that. Whereas active speakers were always that little less bit powerful. But now the modern day, you can probably get just as powerful active speakers as you can passive. Oh, okay, when you go to things like the O2 or Alexander the Ali Pally and things like that, they're all passive speakers, but they're running on massive amplifications and things like that, and they're arrays. Arrays cost you $3,000 just for a basic one. But how about you, Lou? In terms of our live sound now, what do you think?
Yeah, I love it. It's been my favourite live sound I think we've ever had. Like, obviously, I've been lucky in the Apes to sort of join an already quite big established band when I joined, so that we were already playing really good gigs. Some festival circuits, some other ones where we used friends who are professional sound engineers with real high-end equipment, and we've been really fortunate to be able to try a lot of these things. But I'm really proud of our setup. I love it. I love turning up to gigs and I love bringing our own stuff, and I love knowing that it's really great quality. I love knowing that it's powerful, that it's reliable. The things that we can do for a local unsigned band just playing the scene, so for anyone that's listening that's not really familiar, we have zero amp noise on the stage. So if you walk past us, it's deadly quiet. It's only coming out the speakers. We have a set of headphones in, or earphones, and they basically play us a sound that we each want to hear. So for example, if we want to hear a bit of everything, or if, say for example, Sam only wanted to hear really mainly the vocals and just his drum kit, he could have just that. And so to be able to have that flexibility and do everything, and then entrust a sound engineer to stand with the crowd where everyone else hears it, with a mixing desk and on an iPad, who can just say, oh no, the guitar's a bit loud or a bit too quiet, and he can change it as it goes on without anyone knowing anything different, is amazing. So I absolutely love playing with our setup. And then since we've added the subwoofer, that nice beefy sub, I think we're taking it to another level. I'd love to get one more sub and I would be over the moon with that.
Yeah, like so the sub, Lou, we added our new sub. We stuck with Alto, 1,000 watt RMS, 2,000 watt peak, the TS 318 I think it is, and it really made a difference at Centurion. And I agree with you. I'd like to get a second one as well. What about you, Riot? Obviously, you're the front man. You're the most important things. Everyone sings along to you. And how have you felt? And what's the feedback from your dad as well in regards to the new PA system we've got?
Oh, bless you. So I'm the most important guy. I'm joking.
My ego.
Why did you say that, Sam?
I'm number one.
We'll talk about that in a minute. That's a good one. But no, I'm so proud, like you said, Lou, of what we've done. The fact that we've, my dad's kind of, in the early years, again, anyone that's only just tuned into our podcast, check out our very first podcast, The History of the Peppermint Apes, on Spotify. I think it's a good couple of hours long, isn't it, lads? Talks about everything that in the early years. But my dad, formed it with me and was the manager. But in recent years, he's taken a massive step back. He lets us kind of manage it ourselves, and he's there if we need him. And I think we're at a level now where that's great. And the first thing we've done, a business decision, was obviously invest in these speakers. And I think he loves it. It's just so powerful. I think he was a bit sceptical because, like you said, Sam, he gave his opinion, and I think it's knowledge. It's a new kind of brand. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a new brand, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's as familiar as the the Mackeys and the PVs and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely agree with you there. Yeah,
it probably was a risk, and we just thought, well, because the type of gigs we're playing this year, maybe in a couple of years when we're doing more functions, we might upgrade our our equipment. But so far, I mean, it's so good. We don't lack any volume. The clarity's there. I was worried that it would be, it wouldn't be loud enough, or the vocals wouldn't cut through. Obviously, we use backing tracks as well, just to sort of give us some extra sounds and sweeten our set a little bit. And I was worried it was going to come out a little bit muffled. But I think it didn't happen instantly. But I think after a couple of gigs, we managed to get the sound right. But I think that's so important. Over the years, like Lewis said, we've been fortunate to have my dad there. We've been fortunate to have some great sound engineers work with us that we've hired occasionally, like Steve Shepherd, who's really good in the scene. We've played festivals where you've had really good engineers there. But we've also been very unlucky. I remember once we played, obviously none of you guys were in the band, and Lewis, this was just after you left for a little while, with the 2012 lineup that played at the O2 for Live and Unsigned. We took part in a massive competition. Did the local competition, won that at Basildon, the Towngate Theatre. I think he was at that gig, Lou, in the crowd, weren't you?
Yeah.
I think just before that we did like a little gig in Pitsea, just like an audition thing. Then we did a regional final at Bedford, and eventually we played at the O2. And we had this thing where we were going to come out and we were going to do an a cappella of Faith, George Michael, into an original Run Baby Run. Now, to be honest, we probably should have done a different cover. My dad suggested, how about we do another cover? But as a band, everyone agreed that this would be the better song because it would showcase our backing vocals. And to be fair, it did sound the tits. It was the bollocks. We got it down to a T. Well, I guess it would be nice, just but really good 5-part harmonies. And then it went into like Run Baby Run. But the problem was, no one cared. The sound engineer wasn't really paying attention. He was texting the whole time. We did the sound check, but the levels were all over the place. So when we came out at the O2 in front of thousands of people, and we started with the a cappella, the vocals, not our performance, but the levels were all over the place. So I personally think that affected it. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still finished 4th, but it could have been different had we won or came 2nd or whatever. So that's so important. When you're doing something a cappella at the O2, you want the sound engineer to be locked in and have the sound right. So you've got to you got to know who you're working with. So sound is so important. It's like you said, Chris. You can be the greatest musician in the world, but if you're not locked into the sound equipment and you haven't worked on the actual overall sound effects, etc., it's not going to work, is it?
I just want to add to one thing, like what you just said a minute ago, Ryan, and something that Lewis said. So you were saying that we use the backing tracks and stuff. Just want to add that we also use an M Audio Fast Track 8 Ultra, which we pump our backing tracks through, and then it gives me multi-channel audio out of that as well, so I can manipulate sounds, different volumes of instruments, things like that. So that's another good pick, and I also run my in-ear system through that as well. Then that brings me on to what Lewis said, that we're using in-ear monitors. Just a quick question for you guys. How we're using now Silent Stage. I think when I've said it to people before, they're like, well, Silent Stage, why don't you have the on-stage noise? But I've done loads of research online, and so many people have said Silent Stage is the way forward. Luckily, Lewis can DI his Kemper. Chris, we just turn your amp down, don't we? Or, as low as it can go without losing any gain and stuff. Ryan, we DI anyway. Have a little bit of bass on the stage, just because you do lose a lot of bass in the satellite speakers. But how do you guys feel with the in-ear monitors, or would you prefer to go back to like a stage wedge or a fold bag? I'll start with you, Ryan, because you need to hear your vocal, really.
Yeah, I think I'm sold. I think I was a little bit unsure at first. I think you're right. You do need a little bit of bass backline, maybe the amps up a little bit. I'm not a big fan of having no guitar on stage, because sometimes you know, if you have everything come out the in-ear monitors, it can be a bit too much. And there are times when you want to take, you know, the in-ears out, and if it's not there, you feel a little bit lost. So I think it's a balance. I think we're getting it right now. And I completely love your logic, Sam, in terms of don't have too much backline, don't have, you know, because it's also space as well. You don't want to have all foldbacks everywhere. You want to have more room. And you do get a clearer sound this way. So I think, personally, I think it works, but at the same time, you still need a bit of backline, like a little bit of bass, bit of guitar. It doesn't have to be loud, but you just need a little bit there to sort of have a bit of a compromise. That's just my view, though.
Yeah, I agree. I've come to learn that myself as well, that, yeah, a little bit of something on stage. Lewis?
Yeah, I really like it. It's definitely a different experience. It's made a massive difference for vocals, because sort of as the years have gone on with the band, like I'm working with Ryan and Colin, who are both, you know, really phenomenal singers and teachers. I've sort of learned a lot over the years and sort of really tried to improve that side of what I do. So being able to hear myself properly has made a big difference, because I always used to blow my voice out because I'd never have my mic quite loud on the mixing desk, so I couldn't always hear myself, and I'd just have no voice for like 3 days after, because I'd be just like singing as loud as humanly possible, you know, just to be able to sort of hear yourself at times. And even then, sometimes it wouldn't necessarily come through. So in-ears are great, I think, for having a really good mix of everything and knowing what's around you. Again, it's not been a straightforward transition overall, because like I said to you before, I had a bit of a problem with, and it's more my problem, having some ringing in my ears afterwards, more because of like lead so a lot of bands, if you go to a pub, you'll just see they'll have their equipment on the stage, you know, in the area, and it'll all just be turned up, and that's what you're hearing. We're doing something a little bit different, where our amplifiers are going through the speaker system, but we're taking what's called a direct out, which means basically we're taking the sound of those amplifiers straight from the source and putting it out the speakers. But that also means it goes into your ears clean as well. So you get a very pure, unfiltered volume. And I found sometimes when I'm jumping between lead boosts and things, whereas when you're on the stage with earplugs, it just goes a bit louder and it doesn't do much. But when it's in your ears, it goes straight in louder, you know. So it took a bit of time to get used to, not from the not enjoying it perspective, just from the balance of things, you know.
It's finding that in between volume between your rhythm and your lead, isn't it? About blowing your ears out.
And obviously it coming through clean up front as well, because obviously then we're only hearing what our mixes are, not necessarily what the front of house is, what the people in the audience are hearing.
Yeah.
Overall I really like it. There's sometimes I do miss, like, I still think this is a much better way of doing it. Sometimes it is not, like, you do miss having the atmosphere of a live bit of power behind you, but I do think this is the better and more efficient setup. And I do think overall anyone that's listened to us has gone, oh, that was great. And it's always been a bit of a nice, pleasant surprise, because obviously our mix is very specific and it's very focused on making the sound very good. And then the audience get to enjoy the fruit of that. So it's like a different, do you know what I mean? Like, it's you get off on the fact that the audience like, oh, that sounded great. It was everything was really perfect and clean. You had a perfect vision of it in your head. That's the way I'd explain it.
Yeah. No, that's.
But I do really enjoy it. It is a really nice professional. I mean, there's a reason professional artists do it that way, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. Every professional musician uses in-ear monitors. They use one at a minimum. They sometimes they use two, but yeah, they're always using their monitors. But if you think the size of we're playing pubs and small venues and stuff, but I don't know really any other bands that do what we do. They're all using either no monitoring or they're using stage wedges, and you're just adding more noise back to you, basically. That's why I thought let's go down the in-ear monitor. Right, you, Chris, because you're the only one who's gone all out and bought yourself a wireless transmitter kit. We all hardwire at the moment. You've bought, apart from your technical difficulties that you've had on a few gigs, what are you? How do you find the in-ear monitoring?
So much better, like, really. My biggest issue I've always had in bands is not being able to hear myself. I don't know whether or not that's just like a mental thing for me, or whether or not I have not been loud. But I've always been conscious of seeing bands in pubs and the guitarist being too loud, and it's always pissed me off, like really annoyed me. I don't really know why, because I'm a guitar player, but it's just like, when I go and watch a band and their sounds unleveled, it's just like, oh, for goodness sake! Like all it would have taken was an extra 10 minutes in sound check to fix that. You know,
Yeah.
but it just irks me. And I've been in bands where that has happened. Not necessarily the band before this, the Apes, but probably I don't know the band before the band I was in, the Apes. That our sound was terrible, and nobody wanted to invest in it, and nobody wanted to add to it, and which is fine if you just want to turn up at a pub and earn your 60 quid and go and forget about it. I get it, but for me, it was always like, oh no, I've never used to enjoy gigs because of that reason. I used to hate gigging. But no, this setup is perfect, really. For me, I can hear my guitar, I can hear the bass, and I can hear Lewis's guitar, and I can hear, and also what you said, Sam, about each of us having our own sort of separate monitor mix in our ears, tuned to what we want to hear out of the band, really does help. For me, I have to have one ear out, and that's purely because I just need a little bit of ambience from the room, and having that power there behind me. Drums as well. I just need to hear the drums loud as possible. Probably damaging my hearing, but yeah, brilliant. I can, and you are right, Sam. I have had issues with the wireless transmitter, and it's purely me being an idiot. That
is it. Yeah, you can never go wrong with a hard wire. But I even said to you lads at the start, we eventually will all go wireless. Well, I don't need to, but you guys will eventually all go wireless because it's also clutter. Let's get rid of the clutter off the stage as much as we can. So eventually we'll all go wireless. We'll all get chipping and buy ourselves a wireless kit when we're gigging again. But I think at the moment we've got a really good setup at the moment.
There was one point as well. I was watching an interview with a session guitar player who sort of just, he played in Tom Jones's band. He played with the Sugar Babes, I think, when they went on tour. He just played with loads of like bands, and he was just in the background. And he was saying that his first ever gig he did, I think it was in like the mid '90s or something, and it was like on an arena the size of the O2, and they weren't using in-ear monitors. And he said he was about probably 50 meters away from the bass player. He said, like, I couldn't see him. He said you just have to sort of you hear the drummer count in, and then you just go. Like you said, you can't see a thing. And it's sort of a crazy contrast sort of to what we're doing now. And now he was saying that he definitely uses in-ears, and it's just such an easy feeling. But he said, on that side of the venue, you're not playing a gig anymore. You're sort of it's almost like you're playing in the studio because you're just tuned into the song with your in-ears, and it just really does help get that live sound through to you, because you know what it's like a live gig. Without that, you kind of lose yourself sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, a thing to quickly add to that, right, Chris, was it's not even within their monitors, and you're playing a venue that big. You got to think of science behind it as well. The speed of sound. If you're playing 50 meters away from your bassist, and your drummer's 50 meters away, you're going to be out of time. That drum click will get to you, half a second later. So you'll all be out of time. So there is a science behind it as well. I know it's not going to affect us in small venues, but we've played venues like that, you have to use that kind of thing, because you think the lead singer's out the front in the crowd. He's well out of time with the band, isn't he? So it's a science as well.
It has to be organised. But no, just on that though, Chris, what you said, I think you're completely right. It's a shame when people don't get their levels right, and you look at guitarists sometimes that play too loud. Don't worry, Chris, I can confirm that you was never too quiet. No, but no, you guys have got, for two guitarists, I wouldn't say you're both quiet, but now you're balanced. You take care, and the sound is right. There's always room for improvement, but I think that's the same for all of us. And I think at the end of the day, unless you're in a privileged position where you're playing the O2 and you've got a musical director, you're not even worrying about the sound engineer. All the roadies are doing it for you. You're just turning up and playing. You're playing pubs or weddings or festivals to punters, to the average person. Now, there will be some musicians in the audience who sort of understands how it works and the dynamics of a gig. But an average person will just be like, oh, they're crap. You could be the best band in the world. If all they can hear is just drums and the vocal you can't. And the biggest thing is can't hear vocals. And I know that's, I sound like an egotistical prat saying that, but it's true. If you can't hear the lead singer or even the backing vocalist, what's the point?
Yeah.
The punter doesn't, because they don't care. They're just like, oh, the singer can't sing. He's obviously a bit shy.
Yeah.
They don't think, oh, the levels is a little bit tweaked, or the guitarist is a bit loud, or they don't think of that. They just
a gig notable for vocal problems was always Bazfest Boom Room. Never hear the vocals, never hear them at all.
But it's so important. Always have your vocals right, but have the balance right. Take your time. Never feel rushed with sound check. I never feel under pressure. All right, you get some gigs where you got certain punters and certain managers that you've got to work around, but I always say to people, look, we've got to get the sound right. I never really feel pressured with that, because at the end of the day, the last thing you want is to play live and then everyone thinks you're shit when you're not.
Well, a good thing with our mixing desk, the Behringer XR, is I can save our presets. So I'll do because we done our pre-gig, didn't we? Like a rehearsal, and we got all our levels, and I was able to save our preset to recall it at a later gig. And we played at the Swan, and I just loaded the preset, and soundcheck took us half hour rather than 40 minutes, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And
it's just been tweaking it as we go along. So I've saved that from that gig. And obviously, when you go to another gig, you're going to get a different room acoustics. So you load up the preset, and then you just away you go. Really,
I think that's what we do really well as a band as well. We're not, as you said, Ryan, a minute ago, we're not particularly egotistical. We all work to support the end product, really. So, most people, like you say, and even when we're not gigging and we're just fans, or just people that want to enjoy a night out, when you go to a pub or whatever, or a venue, and you have a couple of beers, you just want to enjoy the music. You just want to sit there and it sounds good. So we're all working to support what the people hear at the end of the day. So I think that's like you mentioned about me and Chris. We're not all about being the most loud people in the room. I think we work really well together, and the fun thing for me was tweaking my sound to fit around Chris, because obviously we have different sonic footprints, the type of instruments we use, the ranges that we occupy, the type of technologies we use, and it's quite different. So it's actually a lot of fun to kind of, get everything to work really well and get a real solid mix, and have Sam's ability and Ryan's bass and the vocals. I think it's been a lot of fun collaborating on making, getting a really nice level to where, like you said, Sam, you can pretty much pre-program the finished article and turn up at a venue and press a button and everything's perfect as you left it, and then you can just tweak a little bit here and there just to make it fit on the night.
I mean, especially, can you imagine if you had a residency at a pub and you knew, obviously, the acoustics of that? Say you had like 4 pubs that you do on a rota, you knew each preset for that pub. You would never have to change it because the acoustics. I mean, obviously, it changes by the amount of people you've got, but not by an awful lot. Not an awful amount. But it's just like the acoustics in the rooms that, like you said, Sam, can be a game changer, I'd say, on some aspects with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, what equipment are you all using now, and what amps do you use now? And obviously, Sam, you don't have an amp because you're a drummer. But what drumsticks?
You are your own amp.
Drumsticks do you use? No, Lewis. So, what amp and guitar do you use now?
I am using a Gibson SG at the moment as my main guitar. Traditionally, my Les Paul is my main axe, but in recent years, I've had some problems with my shoulder and things like that in particular.
Yeah,
so having that, yeah, I know. Now I'm looking back. I know why I've buggered my shoulder so bad. And I was quite active as well. I always used to jump around a lot and stuff. So I was just having this like 25 kilo piece of wood on your neck, just destroying your posture. So I can see why you like a Strat. So yeah, I've sort of switched to my SG, so I've still got that powerful sound, but it's just a lot more comfortable on the body. And I use a Kemper profiling amp as my choice of sound. So for anyone that doesn't really know what that is, basically, long story short, is imagine if you have an amplifier that you like, imagine micing it up and recording it like you hear on a record, and imagine having that ability for pretty much every amp, really. And it's designed to go straight into the front of house because it captures the sound of an amplifier and a speaker. So you're getting a complete experience. And yeah, it's great for recording because you can record direct with it. You can record, and obviously we do it at live gigs. Sam just takes a lead out of my amp into our desk, and he can record me perfectly without any interference from crowd noise or anything like that. And from a personal choice perspective, I've always loved tube amps, as everyone has, from like a tonal perspective. But I've always been in bands that have played a lot of covers. So obviously, when like Chris and I, our generation, we grew up with modeling technology rather than traditional, like when you grew up in the 60s and 70s, everyone just bought an amp and that's what it did. That's what everyone had access to. And then as time's gone on, these sort of computer technologies and things have come around, and they've offered, sort of synthesized versions of amps. And so I always loved tube amps, but the ones I had and the ones I used, they were great at one thing, but I always missed having the ability to do something else. So, if I had to have just one amp that would last me, it would probably be like a Marshall Silver Jubilee. So a Marshall and a Les Paul, I could make that work. But I always like the sound of a Fender amp for the cleans. I always like the sound of a Vox for that sort of 60s and 70s breakup. And I always found that I could get close, but not quite where I wanted to. I always knew it wasn't real. So I sort of struggled with that. And then the Kemper came along, and you're getting real snapshots, sonic footprints of those amps, authentic. So I can literally do for me what I want to do. If we play a Blink-182 song, I can have a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier, maybe even off the same album cycle, the real amp they used. If I want to play some old Beatles stuff, we could use real Fender amps. It just gives a bit of a sonic diversity for the things that we're doing. So if we're doing a covers gig and we're doing everything from, like you said, Chris, like some Nile Rodgers funk to hard rock to Britpop, where you've gone from the sound of Mesa Boogies to Oranges to Voxes. And I'm so much happier that I've got the flexibility for me to do that, because I like to play a lot of things. So yeah, from a sonic point of view, it gives me exactly what I want, and it also gives a bit of an accurate representation for the songs that we do. But it gives us a lot of flexibility from a live standpoint as well. So yeah, for me, it's perfect for what I needed, and it's what does the job for us, I think.
I've just got.
What are you using, Lou, for a cab?
I am using a Yamaha DXR 10, which is what they call a full range flat response speaker. So basically, it's a speaker that doesn't color any sound. So if you get a normal speaker, the speaker naturally has some bass and some middle and some treble, and it's got a sort of its own footprint. I've got basically a speaker that has none of that. So it gives you the real accurate representation of what the amplifier was profiled like. So it just gives you, because obviously it's not technically a real amplifier. It's not, if you had like like an Orange amp or a Marshall and a Marshall cab, it's not like that. It's a sort of a snapshot of that. So if you put that through another speaker, you get a bit of another color in. So a flat response monitor is basically a speaker with no added mids, bass, treble. You're getting exactly how it was meant to be heard rather than a traditional cab.
I just want to say on that though, I mean, and this is great for young musicians as well that are looking in, because the setup you've got now, Lou, I think, like you just said, for the sort of the type of gigs we're going to do, it's more practical. You can be more flexible, and you're getting a lot more polished with it now. The sound's really good. But your old sound, when you had that orange cap, I mean, that was the for me, nothing beats that sound. I don't know what there was some sort of warm sounds you had when you plugged in. That's not been beaten yet, but the Kemper's getting better. It's certainly warming up to me, but I can see for other musicians that there's loads of guitarists that have got Kempers, and maybe that'd be another podcast to talk about valve amps, Kempers, and stuff. But yeah, so what was the amp you had before? Because for me, that was the Lou sound.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love that sound. The thing for me is I'm not a particularly tall person. I'm 5'5" on a good day, so I just struggled like logistically carrying all that stuff all the time. It's tiring, it's knackering. I think the one you mean. I had a full Orange setup. So I had I've had everything. I had Vox modeling amps as my first decent amp to rehearse with and to do small venues with. Then I progressed to a Marshall JCM 800, the Kerry King one from Slayer, which again, another.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was your stack, wasn't it?
That was, yeah. And I had a full. Marshall stack. So I had a Marshall 1960A cab. I think it had the greenbacks in it, and it had like a limited edition green Tolex. So it was this big fuck off mega Marshall stack, you know, with like a full 100-watt head on the top.
And Lewis had this in a 3x3 metre bedroom.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah. It was basically my desk.
So
I just
look at
put
me
my
out.
shit on it.
Exactly. It was like you had to walk round it to get into his room.
It was my radiator, and I went in the winter and I turned it on. And then I eventually progressed, as Ryan said. The one that you mean, Ryan, is I had an orange head with an orange cab, so I moved over there, and I used to run a Boss GT10 through the front of it. Yeah, so it was the sound that you loved was actually a orange TH30 clean channel with a Boss GT10 going into the front of it.
Just quickly, Lou. So in terms of your pedalling now, the Kemper used MIDI, didn't they?
Yeah. So the Kemper uses MIDI, and it basically just, I have one foot switch that goes into the Kemper, and I have it all pre-programmed for a clean sound, a lead channel, rhythm channel, and I could toggle effects on it on and off, and I could put wah-wahs and parameters on the volume pedals, but I don't. I keep it really simple. I literally have one clean sound, one lead channel, and one sort of extra, you know, something with a bit of chorus on it, just for random moments when I need it. I'm a pretty simple player, really. I don't have anything too fancy. You could do in a board like that, you know, if you're really technically minded, you could have one pedal that puts 15 things on and all that. But yeah, I just have one footboard that goes into the back of the Kemper. When I click button number 1, gives me one sound. I click button number 2, gives me a different one. And it's all pre-programmed and things like that. You could go well overboard, and you could set it so that it plays along with a click track, and it changes itself without me having to touch anything. But yeah, you could go wild. But yeah, I'm nice and simple. I'm an old school sort of 80s rocker, you know, at heart. So I'm just happy with one sound and one or two sounds, and that's it, really.
Very nice.
And how about you, Ryan? What are you using for your bass setup at the moment?
Well, so I'm quite new to, well, not new to bass, but new to this with this lineup. So I've got this, I've got an Ashdown combo, which works really well. I'm thinking about getting another speaker at some point, but it's really powerful. Don't know what the wattage is actually, but it sort of kicks out a good, you know, volume. Fender Precision, which is what I use. Before the bass setup, I used to obviously play with the Fender Telecaster and you know, have a GT10 into the sort of the orange 8030 combo. So it was yeah, that was a great. And again, with a guitar, I always had a distinctive sound. 3 sounds. I had a clean sound. I had a bit of a crunchy sound, and a lead sound. So that pedal board was wasted on me technically, but you know, if there was the odd song where perhaps, you know, because when I joined Concourse, or eventually changed the name to Strikeout, didn't we, Chris? When I joined that band,
Yeah, or Fastlane. Yeah.
There were a few sort of songs where I did sort of, you know, get a bit creative with the patches on the GT10 for certain sound effects. But I've only really needed 3 sounds, and the same with the bass. Really, I might get a sort of like a muff sound, like a buffer sound kind of thing, you know. But we'll see as time goes on. I'm still adapting to the bass world. I can't really communicate, can't talk bass or equipment with you boys like you can. I just plug in and hope it sounds good.
Sometimes that's more than enough. And Chris, obviously, you're on a different end of the spectrum to me. So tell us a little bit about your setup at the moment, how it differs from what I'm doing, and what attracted you to want to use, you know, the setup that you've got at the moment.
Guitar wise, Fender Strat USA, HSS setup, and I've got a 1962 Fender Telecaster. They're my main 2 guitars. I do have a Paul Reed Smith that I occasionally play as well, and I've got another Mexican Strat. They're my 4 main guitars. You guys only really play live the American Strat, American Tele. Amp wise, I had a like a modelling amp a long time ago. Like, do you remember the PV Viper?
Oh yeah, classic, yeah.
Like a 30 watt thing. and that had let like all these different sounds on it. But I always used to find those kind of things for me were like a jack of all trades. It never really honed in on one thing. And I'm a classic rock guy, so I needed that sound. The band I was in at the time, I needed a big amp for a gig that was coming up. So I literally just went online and I found like the biggest amp that I could for a limited amount of money. And I think I had a Kirk Hammett signature 100-watt stack.
Nice.
And this thing was just fucking huge. And it's the same small bedroom. And like, I used to like dry my underwear off on it, instead of putting them on the radiator. All that. It wasn't valve; it was solid state. So you can imagine when you pushed it past 6, it started to really muffle. So that wasn't really very good. I got rid of that quite quick, and then I went to a Vox Night Train, which is my first valve amp. That was a 50-watt valve amp, and I had an orange cabinet, which I can't remember what the cab's called. It's just the two Celestian vintage 30s in it.
Yeah, I know. I've got one of them here still. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I had it with black skin and orange face on the front, and
Nice.
it's great cabinet. Honestly, brilliant. I mean, you could put anything through that, and it was great. Had the right ohm range on it and everything, so that was fine. Basically, the reason I stopped playing amp, I played it to death. It's died. I just need. It's fucked. Like I could need to replace all the valves on it, but there's nothing left of it.
So you literally played it to death, literally.
Yeah, it's a costume of an amp. I left it up hanging on the door. It's a shell. I had a Black Star as well, which is another valve amp, which is like a 20-watt practice amp. And the amp I got now, I always really, really wanted just a clean amp. I didn't want any bells and whistles on it. I just wanted straight through valve, nice headroom, and the only amp that does that is a Fender DeVille or Blues Deluxe or something like that, or Twin Reverb, any kind of those old Fender amps. So that's what I got now, a Fender Blues Deluxe, and it's a 40-watt valve combo, and it's tweed, so it looks the tits. And its headroom is just unbelievable. I mean, I can have it like basically the volume on 1, and it's basically using its full valve range. So I wouldn't even load box for it. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
So you're not using a digital pedal, are you either, Chris?
All analog pedals.
So you basically use your amp as like a clean platform, and then you use the pedals to kind of colour what you're after. But
I spent a lot of money on pedals, so I mean they're all bootleg stuff. So I got my overdrive, my main overdrive is like a Clarksdale Delta overdrive. That cost me about 250 quid, and that's just a little pedal. And then I run a few like I've got a fuzz pedal, I've got a few other drive pedals. I basically stack them all to get my sound, but then I can turn each one off and I'll get a different sound back to me. So I stack them all up and then I'll drop them off one by one and I'll get different sounds. I mean, I can get an array of different sounds out of that amp. It's an unbelievable amount of stuff it can do. But it's just such a simple amp. But I mean, I bought a new pedal as well recently, so now I've got like I think about three distortion, two overdrive pedals that I run together. Now I've got a distortion pedal on top of those. I've got a fuzz pedal that I run before that, and I've got an octave pedal after the distortion pedal. So basically, it just sounds like Doom Sludge if I put it all together.
Nice.
But I know what you mean, though.
I wouldn't do that live ever, because it would ruin everything that we work for. It'd be like, get that twat off stage. But yeah, but I have loved the simplicity of a valve amp. For me, I can't beat it. I just love the idea of turning up with an amp, plugging it in, and you get what you want out of it straight away.
You've definitely made it work really well for you. You definitely got what you are looking for. And that's the thing, is that it starts adding up, doesn't it? With the pedals and things, they start getting, because I always wanted one of those Wampler Pinnacles, like the Brown Sound in the box. They were like 250 quid. I was like, Jesus Christ, like 2 of these, I could buy another amp.
There's a pedal called a Snouse Black Box, which is actually 120 quid, and it's a Marshall Blues Breaker circuit. The one from the 90s that's like really, really rare now. I think you have to pay, like, they're over $1,000 for a pedal now. But they've basically taken the circuit off Google Images, which all the circuits are there for anyone who ever wants to make their own guitar pedal. You can just download the circuits; they're all free.
Yeah.
And he's downloaded the circuit diagram, and this guy, the company Snouse, has basically remade it, but changed a few components so they don't get done for copyright. And they've basically made a blues breaker, which is the sound of the early 90s blues, like the Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of sound. So that's pretty cool. Also, what I would like to do one day, I mean, it wouldn't work for a pub because there's never enough room, but is to try and mess around with wet and dry signals and basically split the signals down 2 different amplifiers. And I've heard that you can get incredible sound out of doing that with analog systems. So that's definitely one thing I would like to look into in the future. But I don't know how it wouldn't work for a pub. You just never enough room for that.
Yeah. And Sammy, what's your current drum setup after your magnificent hybrid?
So I've got still got my Yamaha Stage Custom in orange, which I refurbed completely for this band. So I sanded all the drum hoops down, took all the hardware off, and I rewrapped it in a purpley black and white kind of camo kind of finish on it. Took me about a month and a half to do it. Painted the hoops all black. So that's what I'm still using. I've been using that since I was 18, 19. And do you know what? I've still got the same skins on it from when I first bought skins. I've never gone for a drum skin, touch wood. They're the same ones. I do need to renew them because it can affect the sound of the kit, but it's doing me well so far. And on the skins, I use Evans Genera G2, and they're quality skins. They're the best skins you can get, in my opinion. So, and it just they've lasted me 10 years. I've never changed them. In terms of my snare drum, like I said earlier, I'm using the Pearl Chad Smith signature snare with a Remo snare drum skin on it. I kind of contradict myself because, say, Evans are the best skins, but the Remo's a coated power coat snare. So it's got that lovely pop on it. I have to put a moon pad gel on it because it's got a really the classic pearl twang on it as well, which doesn't always work. Not a lot of people like it. I love it, but it does resonate in a gig. The only thing that lets me down with my kit really is my cymbals. I've had the same cymbals since I started, and because cymbals are so expensive, I've just never had the opportunity to buy new ones. So I'm using just a Zildjian Planet Z hi-hat, which are one of my first hi-hats I ever bought. They've done me well. They're not broken. They're still going. And then I bought a Zildjian ZHT cymbal from Mate, which I've still got. It's just developed a crack. And then the ride come with the kit, which was a Minor Headliner, which isn't a great cymbal at all. And I just recently just bought, and it was quite cheap just because at the time I just needed to get an extra cymbal. It was a Zoltan cymbal. Never heard of Zoltan. I bought it, and it does sound pretty good, actually. All the reviews are saying it sounds like a high-end Zildjian, so I thought I'd give it a go. And I've not been let down by it, to be honest with you. It does sound pretty good. Hardware-wise, I use double kick pedal, but I don't use it, a lot. I use it just mainly for the songs, a few fills and things like that. Some Apex double kick that I use. I am also looking to start experimenting with triggering and things like that, the snare drum, so you can get them nice sounds. And the reason I use a Yamaha Stage Custom as well, though, is because it's such a versatile kit. I mean, the drummer for Killswitch Engage uses one. That's a metal band. Paramore's latest drummer, not Zach Farrow, they're the drummer they use at the moment. He uses Yamaha. And then you've got someone like George Daniel from 1975 uses Yamaha. So three very big genres of music, and that kit can suit all of them. I like to think that my kit would sound a bit like George Daniel's from 1975, that tight funk sound. So that's why I've kind of not ever changed from the Yamaha, because I've always liked the sound of it. I've looked down everything going down like DW, but you're looking $6,000 for a kit. And that's why I bought the Gretsch in the end for 600 quid, the Catalina Rock, and it just didn't stand up to me Yamaha. I've always just preferred the Yamaha, to be honest with you. I just stuck with it and never been let down with it. It's done the job. I've really enjoyed playing that one.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, mate. That's what
Exactly. It's just doing me so well. I would like to just upgrade my cymbals, though, maybe get an endorsement from somewhere, but you need to be established to get an endorsement. But if I can get down the route of maybe some nice Zildjians or something, or get some Istanbul cymbals, that'd be my kind of my cup of tea, to be honest with you. Like Turkish cymbals, because they're lovely sounding, really, really nice.
And I guess the ultimate question then of this podcast, I guess, do you think that we need to spend a lot of money on your equipment? I mean, I guess we can put a final stamp on it, but based on the sound of it, I think we've all sort of accumulated things over the years, really, and just improved bits by bits to get where you want to be. So, I guess we'll throw that over to you all and see what you think. Do you really need to spend a lot of money to kind of, be successful, so to speak, or do you think you can, budget doesn't necessarily
Well-
dictate what you want to get?
Well, I think it's all relative, to be honest with you. I've just proved that I've had the same kit for 10 years, and I bought it for 250 quid from college, and it's done me well. And it is a professional kit. It just depends how you play and things like that. Okay, yeah, if you're going to go and buy a DW drum kit, or if you're going to buy a high-end Gibson or high-end Fender, you're going to get the better sound. But I think it is just relative to your own individual need, if you like. I think my kit sounds pretty good. I do like it, and it didn't cost me the earth either. Okay, if I only got DW, it would probably make me sound 1,000 times better, but that's just my preference, is what I'm using at the moment. So I think it is relative. Having good kit is very good, but I don't think it's essential.
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
You, Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Exactly.
it depends on, what your goal is as a band. Don't get me wrong, I think you should have a certain minimum standard. If you're a bedroom musician, you want to jam with your friends, maybe do the occasional jam night, as you can do, open mic nights. You don't need to spend a lot on equipment. Just do something that, learn your instrument first. Like you say, we all started with Squires and little 10-watt amps. That's good to get you started. But if you're going to take it seriously, if you want to try and get signed, or you want to be in a really good covers band, you want something that's going to look the part. Let's be honest, you do. I know it's not all about the image, but I think it,
Yeah, it does make a difference. There's a reason why people bought Marshall amps and stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'm not going to name
Dexy.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but over the years we've had different lineups in the band, and we've had people that have been very sort of forthcoming to get new equipment. We've had some people in the band that, were reluctant to invest in equipment. Would rather, have cheaper equipment just for the sake of it, to save the pennies. But sometimes you can do that, and you can get good results, like you did, Sam. What your drum kit wasn't cheap, but you've kept it, you've looked after it, you've updated it. You've not just gone out and bought a new kit for the sake of it. But at the same time, if you're buying something that's cheap and it sounds crap, then you're not doing yourself any justice, are you? So I think it depends on what your goals are. I mean, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, mate, definitely. I completely agree with what you said. Also, it's relative to your environment, like Lewis said as well. And I do think that you have to have decent gear to get decent sound. And unfortunately, decent gear costs money. It's just the way it is. Although I will add that a lot of gear now, a lot of the bottom end stuff, Squire Classic Vibe series, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. It's better than a bottom end Fender. Some Squire stuff is brilliant, and Epiphone as well. I mean, there's some like Epiphone Les Paul Studios you can get. You can pick them up for about 250 quid now. Epiphone Dots, they're brilliant. I mean, there's stuff out there that's bottom end that is, will pass and does the job. So you don't have to spend thousands of stuff. And also, one thing to add, with all of us, we haven't gone out and bought all of our stuff at once.
No.
So, we wanted, but we've got enough. And then we go, I need a pedal. I'll get one pedal. And then think, I really like that sound. I'll go and look on eBay. I found one for cheaper. It's just, it adds up over the years. You're correct. But, my gear, I've been contributing to that, my setup, for about 8 years. So I didn't think at the beginning that I was going to buy it all. This is all the gear I'm going to have, basically. I've accumulated it over the years, and I've saved up and I've bought things. To be fair, sometimes I haven't saved up. I've just thought I'll go and get that on the old 0% finance that these music shops give you.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that with I've got RCF Era 6s for my studio monitors, and I got them on finance. And my Wharfdale mixer that Ryan's got, I had that on finance when I was 18, 19 in college, couldn't afford it straight out. And I bought Shure SM57. I won an SM7B, which I was brilliant.
Yeah.
I love the SM7B. But even going to our PA system, the Behringer is not the best product out there. I think Steve Shepherd used a Mackie system, which is digital as well. And there's probably 3 times the cost of what we got. But he does festivals and things like that, doesn't he? So he needs that kind of stuff. We're doing the pubs, and our mixer is perfectly capable of handling what we need it to do. Same with our speakers as well. A lot of people might say, "Oh no, you can't use auto," but it's not let us down, and it's all relative. All coming back to that. We like it. Our sound's good. We've had good feedback from people about the sound as well, especially from the biggest critic of the band, which is Colin, Ryan's dad. He was surprised. So I don't think you need to pay through the nose to have a good sound. But like you guys have all said, though, it's good to have the good. That's why it's cost money, because it's good kit.
Yeah. I think I'd agree. I would say, like you said, like not to echo all the same sentiments, but I think you don't have to spend a fortune, but there's a good baseline. I think you've got to be at. Like Ryan said, like, oh, my favourite sound that you've ever had, Lou, is this one, which was half the price of what I have now, but it was still all valve amps and decent cabs with vintage 30s. That I still spent probably about £600-700 on. So you don't have to spend an outrageous amount of money. You don't have to accumulate everything now. I didn't buy like we all said, we didn't buy all of it in one go. We got bits on different deals on eBay, on Spot, Gumtree, Facebook. There's a lot of things on the gear pages you can get. It's a lot different now to what it used to be. So I think there is a minimum you've got to get. There's a threshold where it's not quite good enough for venues. But then there's the threshold where you're overkill, for what you need.
If you go out and buy like a QTX line array system with 8 speakers on each side with a massive 20-inch sub.
Yeah,
for,
I'd love to
for the castle
roll out.
main. For the castle
Exactly,
main.
yeah. That's I'd love to roll out and buy a mess of Boogie dual rectifier, but trying to get that down the Swan ain't going to be easy, is it?
Exactly.
It's like,
So you need to limit to what your capabilities are of venues and things like that.
Yeah. And if your goal is being a recording band, if you go to a studio, there is compromise, because any good studio is going to have multiple vintage amps and drum heads and stuff on tap in their venue anyway. So you might not be able to afford £1,000, guitar amp head. But if your goal is originals, when you go to a studio, you can be pretty confident they're probably going to have some of them there. So you're not even limited there. You're going to have the authenticity. If you're playing down the pub, most people really aren't going to care within a degree of what type of tone it is, as long as it's pleasing overall. So like, for example, with me, people might not necessarily know what I've got going on under the hood, but for me, I love the sound. I know what it does, what I want it to sound like. So I think that's the final statement on it all, really. It's just like we said, it's all sort of dependent on where you're going, and you can accumulate things over time. There's deals to be had out there, especially now. So I don't think let a budget sort of put you off too much.
Thanks for tuning into this podcast. And if you liked it, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Okay, cheers guys. See you later.